morning, 8:01 on the East Coast. We begin this morning with a Fox News alert. Chaos erupting again overnight in Ferguson, Missouri. 200 protesters defied a midnight curfew and sparked a standoff with violence.
You're in violation of the state-imposed curfew.
Police urging the crowd to disperse. As you just heard there, they fired smoke bombs and tear gas, and at least 7 people were arrested. Nearby, 1 person was shot. That person is reportedly in the hospital. There's no word yet on who the shooter was, though. Police Captain Ron Johnson explained and stood by the forceful response. He talked early this morning.
I tell you, we have a shooting victim that's in critical condition that may lose their life. We had a subject standing in the middle of the road with a handgun. We had a police car shot at tonight. And yes, I think that was a proper response tonight.
St. Louis Alderman Antonio French was on the ground at the time trying to convince that group of protesters to leave and keep things peaceful. Here's what he thought about the curfew chaos.
I think the use of tear gas from afar to get the last few to disperse was a lot better than going in with basically armed troops like the previous folks did.
Hundreds of other protesters left peacefully before the curfew went into effect.
Well, Rod Wheeler, who's a Fox News contributor and former D.C. homicide detective, has been on the ground in Ferguson for a couple of days now reporting for us. Rod, you were there last night. What's going on?
I was here last night, but let me just quickly share with you and the viewers some brand new information that I just talked to a source about. This morning at around 10 and 11 o'clock a.m., many of the churches, the faith-based organizations here in Ferguson, will be holding a prayer vigil. And what's interesting to me, guys, is that this prayer vigil is not only for the family of Mike Brown, but from what my sources are telling me, it's also for the Ferguson Police Department. They want to try to bridge the gap between the community and the Ferguson Police Department. So I think that's just good news if that in fact is going to happen today. I also understand that the Reverend Al Sharpton is still in town and he's going to be speaking at one of those churches this morning. So we'll hang around and see what happens there. Now, last night it was some more violence, as you've been reporting. The good news with that, though, is that even though there was still more violence, most of the people that was congregated yesterday, the thousands of people, and I was right in the middle of all of them, most of those people did respect the curfew, and they went ahead and left. There was about 200 young men, and I was out there last night watching. They had bandanas around their faces, and they were the troublemakers. The police gave them multiple opportunities to leave. The police asked them kindly to leave. Those individuals decided that they wanted to be defiant and not leave, and then right around 12:30 a.m. last night, the police went ahead and dispersed CS gas. Some of these individuals picked up the gas canisters and was throwing them back at the police. I actually saw that, and then at that point, that's when I said I need to get out of here. Now, when I was leaving the scene last night, I heard multiple gunshots. From what I understand this morning, there was 1 person that was hit, but at this point, we don't know if anybody else was harmed by that. But overall, I think, you know, in the larger scheme of things, I think things went off pretty well last night.
Rod, one of the things that we keep talking about is this police officer. We haven't heard anything about him recently except for family and friends talking about him. Do you have any updates on the investigation in your talking and your dealings with some of these local police officials?
Actually, I don't have anything that I can confirm. The only thing that I kind of heard yesterday, and again, this has not been confirmed, from speaking with a police source, he said to me, he said, Rod, this was not a good situation. And I said, was it a good shooting? And he said, no. I don't know exactly where he got his information from. He is a local police officer here. But again, I think the police department, the police...
Let me just interrupt you for those of us who are not cops. Not a good shooting, does that mean not a justifiable shooting?
Well, that's a good question. Whenever a police officer tells another police officer not a good shooting, what that means in our language is that there's going to be some questions in terms of the procedure and the protocol that was used by this police officer. And I think that's going to happen anyway because, as I indicated earlier, I was actually on Canfield Street yesterday, and this is the street where Mike Brown was shot, where the encounter took place. And I actually walked the 35 feet from where the police car was to where the body was laying in the street. And I think this police officer is going to have a lot of explaining to do as to how that situation went down. You know, we're waiting on the autopsy report. We're waiting on the ballistics report. And those reports are going to be so critical in this investigation. Now, the family have hired Dr. Michael Bodden. I don't know if you guys heard this. They've hired Dr. Michael Bodden, somebody who we know very well, to conduct another autopsy on the body of Mike Brown.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Rob, because there have been a number of critics this morning wondering how this police officer is just sort of able to leave town and why there maybe is no warrant out for his arrest at this hour. It's a question that, I mean, we certainly don't have the answer to, but you as a D.C. homicide detective, in these situations, the reports are that he's left town, he's gone. Darren Wilson, of course, the police officer involved in this shooting while this investigation unfolds. Would they issue a warrant for his arrest while conducting this investigation?
No, not in a situation like this. I mean, this is a police-involved shooting, and I think that's another good question. But even though this officer has left the area, the police department is well aware of his whereabouts. It's not like the guy has left the country. He's somewhere in the area, but at the same time, they're going to keep tabs on him. It's not unusual, though, at this point, at this stage, to not have a warrant issued. They want to go through the entire investigation, continue to talk to witnesses, and then at some point, they're going to probably come up with a solution.
So we just talked to Jay Kanzler. He's the lawyer for the owners of the Ferguson market, where Mike Brown was apparently caught on camera shoplifting or stealing. And that market has been looted. And we asked him, the basic question was, all these cops around, why didn't any of them protect your market from looting? And I don't know if, I hope you can hear this. Here's what he told us.
At 3:30 in the morning, we came back down, my clients and I, and asked the Highway Patrol, Captain Johnson, if he was going to do anything to stop the stream of looters that were going in and out of the store. And we were told they were not going to do anything. At that point, Captain Johnson didn't say why that was the case. He had earlier said that they did not want to seem too aggressive and that they didn't want to put officers at risk for the protection of property.
I mean, some of us, I guess, assume that the whole point of having a police department is protecting your business from being looted. Does that seem weird to you?
Well, it does seem weird. And, you know, I must say that gentleman that you spoke with, I spoke with him as well yesterday, but I also spoke with several other business people around that store. And you know what they were all saying? The exact same thing that this guy said. Police told them, handle the situation on their own. One guy said that the police told him to bring his own weapon. So I think there's going to definitely be an investigation.
Yeah,
it's going to be an investigation
it's like
in terms
Deadwood,
of
South Dakota before they got statehood. I mean, it's like lawlessness. You know?
So the next time a gun control advocate says, well, just call the police. They'll protect you. The police are saying, bring your own gun. You're on your own.
It's an unfortunate situation, yeah, but hopefully it'll get better.
Do you feel, Rod, that things would have been different had they had the local police department released that video right away that showed this man going into the store, actually at the store, leaving the store, where, you know, allegedly stealing these cigars? I mean, this is stuff that was held off for a while. The anger, the animosity, the intensity started to grow over the course of a few days.
Yeah, and well, Rod, the Department of Justice, we learned this morning, didn't want the local police department to release that videotape. What are you hearing about
that? Or fear that it might incite, more anger.
Well, actually, they were right. And we know that when that video was released at the same time that the police officer's name was released, that did exactly that. It incited a lot more anger. In my opinion, from many, many years of experience in investigating cases like this, unless that video, guys, was directly related to the shooting of Mike Brown, there was really no need to release that video. All the reason that the police chief released, the only reason the police chief released that video is because he wanted, I think, to disparage the victim, which in this case, in this community, people did not like that at all. And that's why we saw the response Friday night.
It is fascinating because, well, I mean, certain lawyers coming out saying, look, unless it was tied directly to the shooting, I mean, unless it had something to do with the shooting at that moment, the way that the shooting unfolded, the way that the firing from the officer, Darren Wilson, unfolded, then it's really not relevant to the case. It happened 16 minutes before. He could have shoplifted 5 stores. If it wasn't related to the exact shooting, it shouldn't have been.
But now the Ferguson Police Department is saying, unless we have this wrong, correct us if we do, that the cop may have seen or thought he saw cigars in the hand of Mike Brown and tied him to the robbery, and that's why he stopped him in the first place. Have you heard more about that? Is that real?
You know, I've heard that as well. And again, you know, in these types of shooting situations, you're going to hear all kinds of rumors and things like that. But I think that's why it's so important that the investigation continues and that the people here give the law enforcement folks a chance to get all of the information so that when they do release information, that information is accurate.
All right, Rod Wheeler, Fox News contributor, thank you so much, and also former D.C. homicide detective. Great job.
Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you.
And we should
Appreciate
mention,
it, guys.
you know, the family hiring Michael Bodden.